Imagine you've had the longest week. Work and life have been absolutely beating your ass, and all you want to do is sleep. You get home, take a hot shower or bath, you get all tucked in, and you finally get to drift blissfully into dreamland. And in this dream, you're rich and famous and beautiful, and you have a harem of people begging for a chance to put their mouth wherever you'll allow them to. Life is great. But then you come crashing back to reality as you're awoken from this dream by the sight of some sort of evil, alien-like schlong getting ready to eat your face. You just can't catch a break, huh? I'm Brandon O. This is Terrorific, and we're chopping up 2014's VHS Viral. Welcome back to the place where it's perpetually spooky season. We are continuing our journey through the VHS franchise to crown the best segment of them all. Now, of course, best is a highly subjective term, so I am using the following criteria for my ratings. Number 1, story quality. Number 2, special effects quality. Number 3, how scary is that situation? And number 4, what is the likelihood of death? All 4 of these criteria will be rated on a scale from 1 to 5 and average to get an overall Terrorific score for that segment. Now, in case you're new here or if you've forgotten the previous standings, don't worry, I got you covered. Here is the recap of our current top 5. At number 5, we have A Ride in the Park from VHS 2 with an overall score of 3.5. At number 4, we have the segment titled 103198 from VHS with an overall score of 3.75. At number 3, we have Amateur Night, also from VHS, with an overall score of 4.1. At number 2, we have another entry from VHS, an overall score of 4.25. The Sick Thing That Happened to Emily When She Was Younger. And at number 1, our top dog so far, from VHS 2 with an overall score of 4.75. Very strong. We have Safe Haven. Now, I'll be breaking down all the segments of VHS Viral first, and then at the end of the episode, I'll give you the updated top 5, as well as introduce our bottom 3, which will be updated each episode moving forward. So, without further ado, let's get into it. VHS Viral has 4 segments, so kicking us off at number 4 with the lowest Terrorific score is the segment titled Vicious Circles. It was directed by Marcel Sarmiento, who also co-wrote it along with TJ Simfel and David White. Now, last episode I mentioned a 2012 anthology film titled The ABCs of Death. Well, Sarmiento also wrote and directed one of those segments, the one titled D is for Dogfight. Again, I don't remember what happened in that one. The only one I remember is L is for Libido, because it really just, it really sticks with you. I don't want to spoil it, but you know what? I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis. So L is for Libido is about this sexually based competition where 2 people go head to head, and the loser of each round is killed. Now, as you advance to the next round, the elements involved in this competition become more and more extreme. I'll just leave it at that. It's wild, okay? Whatever you are picturing right now is probably even wilder than that. But anyway, Vicious Circles serves as the frame narrative for VHS Viral, and the story centers on a dude named Kevin. Now, Kevin really enjoys filming artistic videos of his girlfriend Iris, and he also has dreams of one day going viral. Now, he and Iris are sitting at home and they see an ice cream truck leading a police chase just speed by. And Kevin's like, you know what? I gotta capture this shit on film. Now, as this chase speeds by, he runs through the house trying to catch up. And along the way, he ends up barging in on his butt-ass naked granny as she's hopping out of the shower. Pretty awkward. Now, the only reason I included that little detail is because for me personally, that is where the story would have come to a screeching halt. I would have forgotten about everything I was trying to do and I would have been completely embarrassed, and I would have turned around and gone back the way that I came. So I'm not still chasing this ice cream truck. I'm thinking about my life choices, like, wow, why did I not knock first? Wow, how can I ever look Granny in the eyes again? Or wow, how can I ever eat ice cream again? Because if I eat ice cream, it won't be long before I think of an ice cream truck. And if I think of an ice cream truck, it won't be long before my brain makes the correlation to the last time I saw an ice cream truck, which also coincides with the last time I saw grandma's swinging titties. Very awkward. However, Kevin was undeterred by grandma's bush and he makes his way outside. And while he's out there, Iris enters into some sort of trance as she looks at her cell phone. Now, Kevin being out in the streets, things are looking a little bit chaotic, and he sees a police officer trying to tell him to go inside. And as the police officer tells him this, he ends up being run over by the ice cream truck and his arm goes flying. And I have to point out here, the CGI was absolutely horrendous. So that might give you a little bit of an indicator about how I'm going to rank special effects. But as the police officer is being plastered by the ice cream truck, Iris wanders out into the street and somehow vanishes into thin air as the truck passes. At this point, Kevin sees some sort of strange countdown on his cell phone, as well as images of Iris that seem to be her in some sort of distress, and other bloodied images of people and things and objects. Really weird stuff. Kevin deduces that the ice cream truck has been driving around in circles, dare I say viciously, wink wink, nudge nudge. And so he hops on his bike to go follow it around and hopefully find Iris. And as he bikes, he passes a barbecue, and this may be the most random interlude ever. If you understand what was going on here, or like how it fit into the narrative, please let me know, because I have no idea. There's like a group of people at a barbecue, right? They appear to be celebrating one of them being released from prison, and this dude appears to have gang ties. Yet there's like a little tiny dog sitting on his lap, all cute. And somehow this dog ends up with like a grill fork / meat thermometer like stabbed into its head, which then causes this dude to lose his mind and like kill everybody at the barbecue besides the person who was recording. I don't really know what to make of this one here. And the next characters introduced also seem random. So as Kevin is biking around town, he tries to hail a cab, but the cab won't stop because there's some sleazy dude in the back seat filming a woman strip for like his amateur porn site or video or whatever it is. And as she's stripping, she's like, "Hey, do you remember me?" And he's like, "No, whatever." Until she pulls a gun on him and he's like, "Oh, okay." Maybe you do look a little bit familiar. This woman was a victim of revenge porn. Her ex-boyfriend apparently recorded some footage and sold it to this dude who posted it on his blog. So she ends up taunting him though for a little bit too long, and he knocks the gun away and a struggle ensues. He begins to strangle her, seemingly having the upper hand until a head-on collision comes and takes out everybody in the vehicle. I just wasn't understanding exactly where the story was trying to go, but I'll get into that more in my ratings. Anyway, Kevin proceeds on his journey. He ends up finding the ice cream truck stopped in the LA River, and there are women's screams emanating out from the open back door, as well as body parts strewn all over the ground. Yeah, it's not looking great for Iris. So Kevin climbs into the back of the truck, and there are a bunch of TVs and cameras, and Iris appears on screen. And she begins speaking to him, saying that she wants him to upload all the footage that he's been recording. And if he does so, he'll basically end the world because social media rots everyone's brain and turns them into murderous savages. But Kevin presses the button anyway because he thinks that it will save Iris's life. However, he comes to find out shortly afterwards that she has been dead the entire time, right on the other side of the van. And he proceeds to watch LA descend into fiery chaos as this upload makes everyone go insane. So let's get to the ratings. For story, I gave this a 1. You know, maybe my brain was just having a slow day, but I didn't really see where this was going. I understood the overarching theme of like, you know, brain rot, I guess, because whenever these people were watching the ice cream truck chase on their phones, their ears and nose would begin bleeding and they entered into this trance. Cool, you're in zombie mode, you're tuned out, unplug a little bit. I get all that. What I don't understand is how stabbing a dog with a meat thermometer qualifies as brain rot. So, I mean, during that scene, like there was like a police helicopter flying overhead. So I guess the dude thought that he was snitched on. So does that mean he's been watching too many like crime shows and shit? He needs to unplug as well? Is that what the message was? I don't know. I also don't know how much television people watch in prison. So there's just a lot of unknown factors here. And with the cab scene, I mean, I can understand how you can make the argument that watching porn is brain rot, but where does the revenge porn aspect come in? Like, we could have just had like an incel bro at home just like fisting it. You know what I mean? And then just being like, hey, maybe take your hand off your meat once in a while and go touch grass. Like, I understand that message, you know, but why does it have to be revenge porn and getting revenge on top of the revenge porn? How does that factor into brain rot? So yeah, I don't know. Maybe my brain has already checked out for the holidays and I'm just missing something. So if anyone cares to explain it to me, I am all ears. But in the meantime, this story was ass and it gets a 1. For special effects, I gave Vicious Circles a 2. Started off really shitty. And with this being the opening segment or the frame narrative, to have that shitty CGI be one of the first things that you greet viewers with, in my opinion, maybe not the best choice. Kind of set the tone for the whole movie, put me down and like, okay, I gotta lower my bar because this is about to be ass. It just looked really cheap. And cheap CGI is like the fastest way to turn me off of a movie. With cheap practical effects, like you can at least spin that to, you know, work in your favor. Like it adds like a comedic element to it sometimes. Or, you know, at least I can respect the fact that a person put in, you know, this time, effort, and energy in crafting something, even if it doesn't look the best. However, with cheap CGI, it's like, bro, you're at a computer, like you have more resources available to you from the outset, even if you don't have like the higher budget that other studios may possess. You're still working with something that is assisting you. With practical effects, it's just you and what you can craft with your own 2 hands. All that said though, there was one scene that did slightly redeem the CGI. So whenever Kevin was doing his bike around the city, he came across this group of other folks trying to go viral, and they were also on bikes with GoPros strapped to their helmets. And one of them somehow gets run over by the ice cream truck and he's like being dragged along behind it. And as the truck picks up speed, his shoes fall off and his feet are dragging on the pavement. And eventually his feet essentially disintegrate. And yikes, yeah, but the CGI was decent here, which makes me think that maybe the other scenes could have been done better as well. But I don't know, maybe the producer had like a foot fetish and blew the entire budget on making sure that these disintegrating feet, you know, really looked presentable and damn everything else. For situational fear, I rated this as a 2. I think there was, you know, some element of fear involved with Kevin, at least, as he was going around looking for Iris, but he is still recording his entire journey, so that whole virality aspect is still top of mind. And for everybody else, I mean, there's like a morbid curiosity as the prevailing emotion, in my opinion. Like everyone just wants to see how crazy this chase goes, what's gonna happen next. And as they're staring at their screen and going zombie mode, at that point, I imagine all brain function essentially turns off, so fear is kaput there. Vibes were relatively chill as far as apocalypses go. So maybe that says something about the brain rot as well. And for likelihood of death, I gave this a 3. If you were watching the police chase on your phone, you're pretty much cooked. So I'm going to skew a little bit heavier towards the younger audiences and assume that most of the young folks would be watching, and maybe some of the old folks would be chilling at home, just reading the newspaper, playing bingo, wondering what's all that ruckus outside. Which brings Vicious Circles to an overall score of 2. Yikes. I spent way too much time talking about a segment that I did not like. So let's move on now. At number 3, we have Dante the Great. This segment was written and directed by Greg Bishop, who also directed 2016 Siren, which is the VHS spin-off / full-length feature of my current number 3 segment, Amateur Night. And I haven't seen that one yet. I keep forgetting to add it to my list, but maybe this will remind me yet again. But Dante the Great kicks off with a woman named Scarlet being interviewed by the police. She is the assistant to a magician named Dante the Great. And this segment is also partially framed as a documentary about his rise and subsequent fall. Dante started off as a broke dude living in a trailer park who just so happened to like magic tricks. He would perform these tricks for people around him and they weren't really about it. Now, me personally, if I was living in a trailer park, I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of magic. I would imagine that I would probably be pretty down on my luck at that time. Maybe things aren't quite breaking my way. And so seeing some dude pull a fucking rabbit out of a hat, I mean, fuck it. Drink some beers, watch some tricks. Sounds like a vibe. But I think I'm in the minority here because they were like, get the fuck out of our face with this stupid ass shit. Anyway, Dante comes to be in possession of a mysterious cloak that was formerly owned by Harry Houdini himself. Ooh. But this cloak gives Dante real powers and allows him to perform real magic. So he takes his show on the road and he blows up. Now, the documentary includes guests giving testimony after his shows. So one couple walked into his show in NYC and walked out of the show and suddenly they were in LA. And this dude is like, you know, I'm kind of pissed, but also this shit is amazing. Man, fuck that. I would be pissed, and my level of pissdom would depend on the answers to the following questions. Number 1, who's paying for our flight back? Because now we gotta fly entirely across the country. Was it included with our ticket price, or are you gonna send us some cash or provide transportation? Because I am definitely not coming out of pocket for this bullshit. Number 2, where are we staying tonight? Who has the hotel? You paying for that? Because I ain't. Number 3, this was a couple, so I imagine they're on a date night. They were probably feeling good. They had dinner, they got drinks, and now they were trying to go back to the crib and consummate the evening. But now they're in Los Angeles, so no cheeks are getting clapped. Honestly, just pretty rude and inconsiderate. But anyway, it turns out that the magic comes with a price. There is a demon living in the cloak, and Dante must feed it people in order to access its magic. His MO would be to bang his assistants and then sacrifice them. So, you know, I guess that's one way to avoid labels. Part of me wonders if this was like a requirement for the demon. Like, hey, you know, I like my meat a little seasoned, you know, a little little jizz-like taste sprinkled in the meat. So go ahead and handle that for me, Playboy. But don't forget to eat your pineapple first, you know, make it Hawaiian style. But anyway, Dante took a special interest in Scarlet and he asked her to dinner one night, but she turned him down to hang out with her abusive boyfriend instead. But Dante, so obviously being a guy with a very strong moral compass, decides to come to Scarlet's rescue. Not only does he take her under his wing and teach her some tricks like a little rope trick, but he also kills her boyfriend. He feeds this abusive piece of shit to his little cloak, but first he broke his wrists, legs, and neck. Now, one question I have is, did he bang him first? Because I imagine at this point the demon has grown accustomed to having his meat jizzified. So if he got some that was jizzless, would he then pout and no longer allow Dante access to his powers? Questions that need answers. Side note, I get my transcripts automatically generated for each episode, so I really wonder what Skynet is going to make of the word jizzified. Like, I can't wait to see it. But despite Dante being Scarlet's vigilante, she turns out to be a snitch. So she discovers his hidden stash of videotapes of him recording himself feeding people to his cloak and turns it over to the police. And this fucking guy had stashed his tapes in his dressing room behind a fake circuit breaker. Like, you would think a dude who could do real magic would somehow conjure up something to hide his shit a little bit better. But as Dante is interviewed by the documentary crew, he's sitting in a theater. SWAT storms the premises and takes him into custody. He manages to escape, retreats back into the theater, and then he teleports Scarlet from the police station to where he is by creating a portal at the back of her chair. And this is where the segment got the most engaging and entertaining for me. So SWAT tries to take him out, and Dante responds by doing crazy magic shit. He's like making dudes levitate as he breaks their bones. He like peels a dude's chest open, made another dude levitate, and then controlled his rifle to fire it at the other officers. And amidst all this chaos, Dante ends up dropping his cloak, and that's when we discover that one must be in direct contact with the cloak in order to use its magic. So Scarlet, after witnessing all this shit that Dante has just done, realizing that he seems to be powerless at the moment, grabs the cloak and she does some magical shit herself. And then she and Dante start playing tug of war with it, shooting fireballs and shit at each other in the process. And eventually Scarlet does that old school sleight of hand rope trick that Dante had previously taught her to take him by surprise, and this cape or cloak eats him. Fearing its power and the danger of it falling into the wrong hands, Scarlet decides to burn the cape, but somehow, magically, it ends up hanging in her closet. As she looks at it, demonic arms reach out, grab her, and the footage ends. So let's go to the ratings. Story-wise, it was okay, so I gave it a 2.5. I mean, outside of the cum-loving demon living inside of a cloak, there wasn't much original to it. You know, we've seen this story before. A good guy goes bad. We've seen dudes abuse their power to take advantage of their subordinates. We've seen dudes, you know, try to take out ex-boyfriends in order to have a better shot at getting into the pants of the girl they're into. All these different elements just rolled up into one dude, but still, nothing mind-blowing. I also gave the special effects a rating of 2.5. The footage of Dante practicing his magic, the CGI is just really not good. Again, it looks pretty cheap. But it was redeemed somewhat by the final confrontation with all the SWAT guys, with all the levitation and the chest peeling and shit. Like, it didn't look the best, but still, it was respectable. Like, when everyone was flying through the air, I could almost see like the wires attached to them. But it's a craft. Like, I give points to the craft. Situational fear, I gave it a 3. I mean, I can imagine that being eaten by a cloak, a demonic cloak, is probably a little bit scary, but people were in various states of aliveness as well as like consciousness. So, for example, one of the assistants who Dante fed to the cape or the cloak, they had just finished smashing, so she was knocked out in her little t-shirt, and then she just happened to briefly wake up, or, you know, groggily wake up as she's being eaten. So there probably was a little spike of fear, but not the sustained level that would warrant a higher score. As well as the boyfriend that Dante fed to the cloak. He was dead, so maybe he was a little bit afraid while he was getting his bones broken. Maybe a little bit more than a little bit afraid, but still, that sustained level of fear, I don't think was there. And I think it's all brought down even further by Scarlet. She was just out there fighting, you know what I mean? Adrenaline was pumping. She was in it to win it. So I think her fear was a little bit lower. So average that together, I think you get roughly in the ballpark of a 3. And likelihood of death, this was one of those scenarios where everyone did die, but I think there were various avenues to avoid said deaths. So number 1, you hate magic, so you just don't go to any of Dante's shows, right? Number 2, you don't become his magician's assistant, and or you don't have sex with him if you can resist. Number 3, if you see your colleague get their chest peeled open in front of you and you decide to still proceed forward, well, that's on you, buddy, because the exit was behind you. And number 4, if you try to burn a demonic cloak and you see it reappear unharmed, undamaged in your closet, maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't go up to it and put your goddamn face in it, bro. Just a tip, I don't know. Oh, and also you could not abuse your partner. That is another solid way to avoid being eaten by a demonic cloak. So, likelihood of death, I rated it as a 3. Which brings Dante the Great to an overall score of 2.75. Now, if you're still here listening, I figure that means you already follow or subscribe to the show on your favorite listening platform, but just in case that isn't the case, go ahead and hit that button now while we're thinking about it so you don't forget later. My analytics tell me that there is a noticeable gap between the number of people who listen to the show and the number of people who follow the show, so I'm here to tell you right now, don't be afraid of commitment. I'll take good care of you, I promise. And if you're feeling really froggy, go ahead and leave a 5-star rating too. You know, again, I'm assuming here because you're still listening that it's not a 1, but if I'm being presumptuous, by all means, let me know. Okay, coming in as the second best segment in VHS Viral, we have Bonestorm. It was written by Justin Benson, who also directed it alongside Aaron Scott Moorhead. Now, the two of these dudes are a filmmaking duo whose works tend to lean towards the sci-fi end of the horror spectrum. These works include 2012's Resolution, 2014's Spring, 2017's The Endless, and 2019's Synchronic. Fun fact, all 4 of these films take place within a shared universe. The only one I've seen, however, is The Endless, and I don't remember much about it besides I think it had to deal with like alien shit. Resolution I never heard of, and Spring and Synchronic are often recommended to me by my algorithm or whatever, but I haven't actually sat down and watched them yet. But now that I know that they're all like spiritual sequels or whatever, then maybe I might bump them up the list. And you and I both know how much Marvel loves their timelines and shared universes, so it's probably not a coincidence that these two dudes were tapped to direct episodes of Moon Knight, Loki, and Daredevil Born Again. But Bonestorm centers around 2 skater bros named Jason and Danny. They're trying to make a totally rad video in hopes of, you guessed it, going viral. So they hire a dude off Craigslist named Taylor to film their shredding. But Taylor has ulterior motives. He appears to think that the best way to make a video go viral is to capture someone being seriously injured or killed on tape. So, when one of the bros is trying to skate across the road, Taylor tells him that the coast is clear even though he can very clearly see a vehicle approaching. Not cool, bro. This is probably why you don't hire anyone off of Craigslist. But Taylor convinces Jason and Danny to journey to Tijuana to skate a ditch. So once they arrive in TJ, they see that there is some sort of like animal sacrifice remains and occult drawings and symbols all over this ditch. One of the dudes beefs it and his arm starts bleeding. And as some of the blood drops onto the pentagram or whatever, it starts to sizzle. Suddenly a woman in a dress and a flower crown is standing there, and a roadman also appears off to the side and begins eerily chanting. Now personally, if I see someone spontaneously appear out of thin air, I am not approaching them. In fact, I am going the opposite direction as quickly as I can. However, Taylor has other ideas in mind, so he approaches the woman and he reaches out his arm to shake her hand, and she promptly rips it off. So Taylor, after wanting to see someone get seriously injured on tape, congratulations buddy, you got your wish. Unfortunately, it is you. And as this unfolds, a bunch of other folks in robes and skull face paint show up, and the fellas find themselves in the midst of a battle with the cult. And let me tell you, these boys put in work. They're like grabbing drop swords and machetes and hacking heads off, swinging their boards, cracking skulls, stabbing people in the neck with like bones on the ground from these animal sacrifices. But everyone they killed suddenly resurrects as skeletons. Pretty awkward. But Jason and Danny are too rad to die. They end up skating the fuck out of there, but Taylor, however, is not as lucky. He ends up being eaten by the enormous demon that emerges from the sewers or whatever. And they also brought like a 4th guy with them who paid for the gas money. R.I.P. gas money kid. And he died too. So let's break down the ratings. For story, I gave Bonestorm a 3. Decent, but nothing spectacular. We've seen cults summoning demons before in films in general, and specifically within this VHS franchise itself. So I wanted to see something that made me be like, wow, that is different. But I will say the banter and like the side commentary, the side dialogue in this film was pretty funny. Like we had quotes like, do you want to be immortal or do you want to be a giant vagina monster? That is a very existential question right there. You know what I mean? And then there's one scene where one of the dudes is skating and he's shooting with his pistol as well. And as these cult members bleed, their blood like spontaneously combusts and catches on fire. And so he's like, yo, do crackheads have fire blood? Again, these existential questions, man, they really bake the noodle. The special effects, though, very strong. For the most part, they relied on practical effects. Whenever they were cracking skulls and shooting and stabbing and all this shit, it looked pretty gnarly. However, for some inexplicable reason, they randomly threw in some bad CGI fire that without it, I think you would have been out of 5, but got a docket for that. For situational fear, Bonestorm gets a 3. Now, me personally, I would have been out of 5, but Jason and Danny, I guess, are braver than I am because they look like they were having a good old time as they were causing mayhem and trying to fight their way to survival. Taylor, however, seemed to have a much less pleasant experience. Not only did he have his arm ripped off, but one of the cultists' blood dripped on him, so he got lit on fire on top of that. And if that wasn't enough, once the demon emerged, it picked him up and swallowed him whole. So we got to see the camera just travel down this demon's throat. Like I said, special effects were strong. Why, oh why did they feel the need to ruin that somewhat with this random CGI fire? There were plenty of times where they used practical fire. Just keep rocking with that. But whatever. For likelihood of death, I gave it a 2.5. Half the group died, but everyone could have survived if they had just not gone to TJ. Stay home and shred. And also, Taylor didn't need to approach this spectral woman and have his arm ripped off and be in the position to have cultist blood light him on fire and a demon consume him. Wholly avoidable. But Gas Money Kid, I don't know, I think they kind of snuck up on him or they like surrounded him or whatever, so he was kind of fucked. But again, if you're not there, you don't get stabbed. So averaging those 4 ratings together brings us to an overall score for Bonestorm of 3.25. Now, I've said multiple times, if you're going to have a plot that we've seen before, you need to add an element that is different. And our number 1 segment definitely delivers on that front. No pun intended. So our number 1 segment in VHS Viral is Parallel Monsters. It was written and directed by Nacho Vigalondo, who's probably best known for writing, directing, and acting in the 2007 Spanish sci-fi thriller titled Time Crimes. Time travel movies are like kind of in a similar boat to me as horror films. Like with horror films, even if the quality isn't good, they can still find a way to scare you, and therefore I like it as a horror film. Same with the time travel movie, even if the quality isn't good, it can still make me think to a point where I'm like, you know what, I still find this pretty engaging. And Time Crimes is both a good quality movie as well as being engaging. Vigalondo also wrote and directed a very underrated joint, in my opinion, 2016's Colossal starring Anne Hathaway. That shit apparently only made like $5 million at the global box office on a budget of $15 million, so it was a total flop. But I think it's worth the watch. I love original ideas, and having a story involving an alcoholic woman drunkenly discovering her ability to manifest a giant monster in Seoul, South Korea definitely qualifies as original. But the story of Parallel Monsters centers on scientist bro Alfonso, who has built an interdimensional portal at his home. And he soon discovers that this portal links to a parallel universe, and the parallel universe is at his home. So he sees an alternate version of himself. Everything is the same but reversed, like a mirror. So Prime Alfonso and Mirror Alfonso agree to swap places for 15 minutes. What could go wrong? As Prime Alfonso makes his way through the mirror home, he sees a framed picture of some occult looking shit as he ascends the stairs. It's a big red flag there, buddy. I would have turned around and taken my ass back to my home base, but science is about discovery and intellectual curiosity apparently, because he continues. So Prime Alfonso encounters his mirror wife, Marta, and she's wearing a robe, and she's accompanied by two scantily clad gentlemen. Now, Marta leads these three men to the living room where there's some kind of bag, and appears to be filled with like bloody meat or organs or some shit, and is suspended in front of a TV playing a pornographic snuff film because someone is like moaning aggressively in the background while another person is being burned at the stake. Bro, I don't care how intellectually curious one is to remain in this situation where you are seeing sign after sign that something over here isn't quite right. Not only have you walked into like an orgy type of situation or group sex, like is there like a threshold, like a minimum threshold that makes something qualify as an orgy? Is 4 people an orgy, or is that just group sex? I'm not well versed. I'm not well versed in these sexual escapades and terminology, but anyway, you have that. You have some sort of unidentified bloody meat in front of you. What being did this come from? Is this animal meat or is this person meat? And on top of all of that, there is literally a person being burned alive on the TV in front of you, and everyone else in the living room seems to be into it. But as a scientist, Prime Alfonso needs to collect more data. So he notices there's some kind of weird mechanical groaning sound that's coming from outside. So he goes and sees what's up. And what's up is that there's a blimp in the air, and adorned on its side is like some neon upside down cross. Okay. Meanwhile, back in the Prime dimension, Mirror Alfonso is taking pictures of Prime Marta while she is in the bedroom asleep. Bro then drops his pants and whips out what appears to be a demonic sentient dick. I'm talking fangs, tongues, all that, and it appears to be hungry, and Marta's at the top of the menu. But she wakes up and sees this thing in her face, and she's like, yo, what the fuck? Meanwhile, over in the mirror dimension, Prime Alfonso has finally collected enough data and decides that it's time to get the fuck out of there. And as he's trying to leave, he gets confronted by those two scantily clad gentlemen, and they're like, yo, where you going, playboy? You filming this right now? We don't like that. And their eyes and mouths begin to glow. And they end up like knocking Alfonso down to the ground. And at that point, one of them pulls out his demon dick too. He's like, dinner time, my dude. But luckily for Alfonso, he has a screwdriver in his pocket. So he pulls it out and stabs this dude's dick. Now, I gotta ask. It seems like these people were strangers, because Mirror Marta had to ask them what their name was because she forgot. And they both had the same first name, which, okay, that probably means something, but I don't really care enough to dissect that right now because we're talking about demon dicks. Okay, so imagine you answer like a Craigslist ad, because that seems to be the theme in this film. And it's like, hey, why don't you come over for some fun? It's me and my husband. We can put on like a snuff film that has like some pornographic elements to it, and we can reenact what's happening by first like eating some sort of mystery meat, and after that we can all fuck each other. But there is a risk that you take a screwdriver through the urethra. And I bet even with that caveat, there would still be some dudes who answer that ad, ye nasties. But the real question is, do demon dicks even have urethras, or is that urethra just the equivalent of their throat? So if they piss or cum, are they just vomiting? Are they spitting up bile, essentially? Is cum the equivalent of demon dick bile? That's what I need to know. But Prime Alfonso leaves these dudes to navigate the new challenge of having your dick choke on a screwdriver, and he continues back through the house where he's confronted by Mira Marta. And for some reason, maybe she heard some scuffling going on outside, but she appears to be aroused now. And so she starts to disrobe. And as she disrobes, she reveals that she also has a demon coochie. So it looks like some kind of deformed Venus flytrap. And Alfonso was like, man, fuck all of this. And he shoves her out of the way. But she grabs his shoulder like, yo, what's going on with you? Why are you acting like this? And he just like decks her, bro. And he runs down the stairs to get back to the basement to go back through the interdimensional portal. But I have questions, bro. I have questions logistically. So this coochie is humongous. Like camel toe wouldn't even be able to describe it. It's like an entire camel's foot. How do you hide that under any kind of clothes? And these dicks are long as hell. They look like fire hoses, bro. How are you hiding this? Like, it's very clear that these people are growers and not showers. So do the genitals like retract back into their bodies? Do they like fold inwardly when they're not in use and then open up? Is there like a little compartment that comes in this dimension? How does it work? How do you pick out a pair of pants? How do you not get your lips or your tip stuck in your zipper, bro? And sexually, do you have to like sign a waiver first? Like, hey, you know, if we do this, one of us might be eaten or like how does it work? And like masturbating, is that just like a thing that doesn't exist? Or is there like a society of people that have like just like missing fingers because they couldn't resist and now they're just like ostracized? Like, there goes that bean flicker over there with her fucking 7 fingers. There's 7 fingers. God damn it, Tammy, control yourself. I just need to know, what are like the societal stigmas in this in this parallel universe? And I can't see a way that oral would function in any capacity. So is everyone just like eating ass instead? What did the assholes look like? Are those also, do they also come with like fangs and shit? Dog, I could go down this rabbit hole all day, but let me get back on task. So Prime Alfonso gets back to his dimension and he sees Mira Alfonso covered in blood heading towards him so he can return to his own dimension as well. And they get into a little confrontation and Mira Al stabs Prime Al with his trusty screwdriver. At this point, Prime Al is like, oh yeah, I did leave my wife alone asleep while I allowed a mirror version of myself to wander unattended in here. Maybe she's in danger. So he's like yelling out for her and she's not answering. So he's thinking the worst. Meanwhile, Mira Marta comes up and approaches Mira Al as he steps back into the mirror dimension. And she's like, hey, yo, in accordance with the laws against domestic violence in our universe, I hereby sentence you to death by coochie. and she whips it out and bites his head and I guess eats him. At this point, Prime Al's like, okay, I've seen enough. So he shuts the portal. Finally. And Prime Marta comes stumbling into the lab, still alive. I guess she just demolished Mirror Al's dick, but she sees Prime Al on the ground, mistakes him for the one with the demon dick, and she stabs him to death as the footage ends. Bro, what a fucking ride. Now, you're probably not going to be surprised at my story rating. I have to give this a 5 out of 5 because holy shit. It puts such a wholly original spin on a concept we've seen before with this whole dimensional portal, doppelganger shit. Bro, going to a universe that has people who look exactly like you with the small, subtle difference that they possess carnivorous genitals, that automatically gets you a 5. That is insane. That is insane. For special effects, I gave it a 4. I mean, people really sat down and created, using practical effects, demon dicks and Demon Coochies. This makeup and effects team deserves a round of applause, a standing ovation, all the flowers in the world. And the only reason I didn't give this a 5 is because we didn't see the genitals in action. I wanted to see them eat something or, tear something or somebody up, have that gore as well to go along with these great prosthetics, but we didn't get it. Maybe next time. If there is one, there should definitely be a sequel to Parallel Monsters or like a full-length feature film. I would definitely watch that. Situational fear is another easy no-brainer 5, and I think the reasons speak for themselves, or if they don't, I've already outlined them. I mean, there's not much more to add to that. And for likelihood of death, I gave this a 1 because it's totally avoidable. Like, first of all, why are you building an interdimensional portal in your house at like 4 a.m., dude? Like, get some sleep, maybe think about if this is the best idea, and if it is, and you still want to proceed, think about how to do it safely. Don't just, decide like all impromptu to let your mirror version of yourself wander through your house while your wife is home alone and she's asleep. Like, bro, she can't even defend herself. And of course, all of the ignored red flags, the framed photo of the exact ritual that Prime Alfonso walked into should have been the first indicator to turn his ass back around. The fact that Mirror Alfonso seemed sketchy as hell from the beginning should have been reason to be like, you know what? Maybe let's not do this after all. But whatever, intellectual curiosity, scientific endeavor, blah, 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 cool. But don't people usually have some kind of like safeguards in case things go awry on these scientific endeavors? Of course, there's going to be some risk involved in charting the unknown, but you don't have to do it by yourself at 4 a.m., bruh. Ample opportunity to survive here. And in Mirror Alfonso's case, I mean, don't stick your dick in some unconsenting person's face. That might help you avoid taking a screwdriver to the urethra. So that brings Parallel Monsters to an overall score of a solid 3.75. Recapping the scores from our 4 VHS viral segments, we have Vicious Circles bringing up the rear with a score of a 2. Dante the Great coming up next with a score of 2.75. In second place is Bonestorm with a score of 3.25. And at the top, once again, is Parallel Monsters with that 3.75. And with that score, Parallel Monsters has crashed the top 5 overall. So it is tied for 5th with the segment 103198 from the first VHS film, both of them with that score of 3.75. But using the tiebreaker of the story rating, Parallel Monsters with its 5 trumps 103198 with a score of 3.5 to take the number 4 spot. So at number 5, 103198. At number 4, Parallel Monsters. At number 3, we have Amateur Night from the first VHS with a score of 4.1. At number 2, also from VHS, is The Sick Thing That Happened to Emily When She Was Younger with a strong score of a 4.25. And at number 1, still our top dog, Safe Haven from VHS 2 with an overall score of 4.75. And for the first edition of our bottom 3, the third lowest rated segment, we have Tape 56 from VHS with a score of 2.38. The second lowest, we have Slumber Party Alien Abduction from VHS 2 with a score of 2.13. And at the bottom, the worst segment thus far in the VHS franchise, in my opinion, from VHS Viral, Vicious Circles with that score of 2. And that's all from me. Happy holidays. I'll see you back here in 2 weeks for VHS 94. But in the meantime, remember, always keep it spooky.